Alright everyone, it's time for Occult Literature, video number 152, The Realms of the Egyptian Dead, a spooky title for, 2 days before Halloween. Unfortunately, even with Prime, I don't think it'd be on your doorstep by Halloween, because mail doesn't run on Halloween, does it? Yeah, that's a mail holiday, I think. Who wants to be in a mail truck on Halloween? All the kids will be throwing fucking pumpkins and candy at you. This is a very interesting work. It's rather short. It's 46 pages, technically 45, but Amazon. Sometimes, for some reason, in the conversion, you end up with an extra page, like the title page has a blank opposite side, and for some reason it counts the page length or something. So I got to keep that in mind. It's basically 45 pages, fairly short. It's a dense work. It's a typical academic work from the Victorian era, made by Alfred Weidemann, 1902. Very good year, by the way. That's the first couple of decades of the 20th century are basically the golden era. That in the 1890s before. The golden era literature-wise with regards to academia, with regards to spirituality was very much in vogue. You have the archaeological renaissance occurring at this time. People are digging through tombs and so forth. And they're bringing back all of this lore, and they're getting interested in it, in part because of the early eugenics movement. They're trying to seek basically the origins of mankind, the timeline of human history, sometimes getting it wrong in the process, sometimes making great discoveries. This is about Egyptology, this particular work, specifically with regards to a few basic topics. Very densely referring to the clay figurines, the replacement, the symbolic replacement of live sacrifice in Egyptian ritualism. At first, they're mummifying animals, burying it with the dead. They're doing this with the idea that they come back to life along with the departed and become basically useful to them. That is, you have some mummified cow heads in the tomb. They, in the afterlife, if they're judged worthy, of course, they go to the sort of undying land equivalent, sort of the equivalent of Elysium, the Elysian fields. And then they use spells. If they've been instructed properly, it's usually inside the tomb. It's written there with the thought that the spirit could then read them as well. They could bring them back to life. But this was expensive, so they started replacing them with clay figurines and then formulated more spells to revive them. They additionally had the concept that during life, the pharaoh or some high priest could prescribe that because you were virtuous, you've done your job, you're a good person, they could write up they could grant you things in the afterlife, because the pharaoh, of course, once reanimated post-mortem, became sort of like a god and was then able to use their power to dispense goods to you in the name of the Egyptian state, more or less. As things became symbolic, as it became clear that it wasn't a granting of physical goods in the real world, it was the afterlife, the spirit world, they could grant whatever they want. So instead of, you get a couple cows and a handmaiden slave or something, it's like, I give you 10,000 camels and 100,000 acres of land and 10 alligators and crocodiles or whatever, and they could do whatever they want. It also refers to the mummification process a bit. The use of natron and so forth, various substances to preserve the body, the removal of the heart, and the replacement at times as well with an equivalent, because that was thought very important. And again, through spells, that could be reanimated, so the person was more or less an actual living thing. Also, the form of the afterlife as conceived of in certain periods being very much like Earth. Literally nothing more than being like an equivalent of the Nile Delta. So when you're farming in this afterlife, according to them, you've got your irrigated little plot of land, very fertile, and you can grow your vineyards and be drunk all the time and spend your day. You can hunt in the swamps, and you can do literally whatever you want to do. In real life, your clay figurines that are now living people become sort of slaves, and they grow your grain for your bread and so forth. They raise your cattle for your meat. And supply everything else that you need. So in the afterlife, basically, you go out every day, you hunt, you come back, and you screw and get drunk and do that forever. And it sounds like a pretty cool afterlife. It also dwells on some of the stories like Osiris, the symbology, as well as the self-contradictory nature of different veins and different books and different inscriptions within Egyptology. Literally, the same story, sort of like an origin story for a god, might be retold 2 or 3 different ways throughout time and actually contradict itself. So it's a very, very interesting work, highly recommended. I had a good time editing it. The next work that I'll be releasing is a counterpart work by Weidemann. It's longer. it'll be closer to like 85 pages once it's in a modern format. You got to realize the original, this is 45 pages in a modern format. In the original format, it's about 75. There's a huge difference in page length between what you see in late 1800s, early 20th century styles of format. Once you compress that down to a modern format, way different. Typically loses a lot of page length. As opposed to earlier texts, typically the page length ends up longer, actually. It's very funny. That's regardless of what you do to page size. But the next work, 153, will also be as well a vitamin work on Egyptology. It'll be about their conception of immortality. So an interesting work as well. Link in the description, of course, in this video. I probably should have mentioned that at first. To the edition of this work, link in the description of that, and also to my 2 books blogs, where you can find additional academic works. Not much on Egypt yet. I'm looking to branch out into that over the coming couple of years. That's about all. Peace out.